So this week we're going to be starting into a new content standard. It's going to be 6.c.2, and this content standard says that we are going to need to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide both fractions, decimals, and even percentages. So today we're going to start looking at fractions, decimals, percentages. You just spent a few minutes talking about factors and multiples. Those are going to help us a lot as we look at doing a couple of things with those types of numbers. So the first thing I want to look at is just reading fractions. This is we would say 1 and 3/9. Pretty simple, but you got to be able to say things correctly. So first of all, that's 1 and 3/9. The first thing I want us to be able to do with these is to what we call simplify or rename a fraction. There are a couple different reasons we want to do that. First of all, if you are adding fractions together, you have to have like denominators. We'll get into that a little bit later, but sometimes we need to take numbers at the bottom and multiply them by something to get something different at the top. The other thing we will have to do is be able to get in simplest form or simplify, and that's what we're going to work on first. So simplifying a fraction. So I have 1 and 3/9. Luckily, when you're simplifying, your whole number you don't have to mess with. So we're going to keep 1 the same. But I'm going to have to do something with my 3/9 in order to get it in simplest form. I know this because 3 and 9, if I think through them, they have some things in common. First of all, I happen to know that this number is actually a factor of this number. I can multiply this by something to get this number. If that is the case, I will divide both numbers by the same thing, and I'll show you how that works out, but that will give me my answer in a simpler form. So in this case, I've got 3/9. What I'm going to do with my 3/9 is I'm going to multiply my 3 by, I'm going to divide, and I'm just going to worry about the fraction part at this point. I'm going to divide by 3 over 3. I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by the same thing. If I do this, I actually get 1 and 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. I actually get 3 and 1/3. This is actually the same fraction in simplest form. Actually, what I did was I took each of these 3 pieces and put them into groups of 3, just like we do when we divide normally. So that means those 3 pieces went into one piece. Each of these 3 pieces went into one piece, but there were 3 of those because 3 times 3 is 9. So again, all you're going to do with your fraction part, you're going to divide the top and the bottom by the same number, and that will put them into bigger sized groups, hence 1 and 1/3. So this would be how you simplify a fraction. Now, if I need to do something to find a common denominator, and say my common denominator was 9, and I needed to get there from 3, I would just do the opposite thing. I would multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing. We'll get into that later when we get to adding 2 fractions together. But for right now, what you really need to know is how to get to simplest form, and there you go. All right, let's take this 1/3, and I want to show you how to do a couple more things with it. So I'm going to take my 1/3, 1 over 3. Now, I want to take this guy and I want to make him into a decimal. This is where we get a little bit trickier. So what I'm going to do, if you remember anything about fractions from last year, a fraction is basically just a division problem. The weird thing about this division problem, though, is that my number that is inside my house or inside my vinculum is actually smaller. My dividend, is going to be smaller than my divisor. You can do that. I'm going to show you how to work that out real quick. So this will be the same as taking 3, putting that outside our house, and putting the 1 on the inside. So I have 1 divided by 3. Now, this isn't really that hard. We know this in real life because this is basically one thing divided into 3 equal parts, which is 1/3. We know that. But if I need it as a decimal, I'm going to have to do some fancy math here, and I'm going to show you how. So, what we need to remember about this 1 is that it is the number 1, but after a number, any number, and actually any number that we have to the left and the right of the number, there are an infinite number of zeros. Remember, 0 is just a placeholder. We don't have to write them in if there's nothing in between our digit and another digit, but they do still exist. So what I'm gonna do, I do know that my decimal point would be right after the 1, right? And I have 0 tenths. Let's say I want to go to the nearest 100th. I'm going to write my zeros out to the 100th, and I'm going to put the decimal, I'm going to pull it straight up. That's all you have to do to be able to divide with the decimal inside your vernacular. So what I'm going to do here, 3, of course, can't go any times into 1. I can't take groups of 3 out of 1 because 1 is too small. So a 0 is going to hold my place there as well. But now I'm going to get into my first 2 digits, and 3, I can't take groups of 3 out of 10. Actually, I happen to know in my head, 3 times 3 is 9, and that's as close as I can get to 10 without going over. So I'm going to take my 9, subtract this guy out. 10 minus 9 is, of course, 1. Drop down my next digit. Again, it's going to be the same deal because I have the same number that I had for the first time. Again, I can go in 3 times, and my answer again will be a 1. Crazy thing about this is this process, because each time 3 is going to go in, each time I drop another 0, I'm going to have 10. I can only take 9 out each time. This 3, put a bar over it. That means that pattern is going to repeat for forever. And this is actually the exact decimal value for 1/3. That's the process going from a fraction to a decimal. Now, for our purposes here in the next, through this lesson, I'm only going to ask you to work with numbers to the nearest 100th. That means you're going to need to figure out to the nearest 1,000th and then round up or down to figure out your answer. All right. So ladies and gents, we know how to take a number, we know how to simplify that fraction, we know how to take a fraction and get it to a decimal. The final thing we need to be able to do is change a decimal into a fraction. That's actually maybe the easiest part of the whole thing. If I come over here just a little bit, let's give myself a little extra room to work. Let's take this same number. We'll not worry about the 3's repeating. Let's just say we have this number right here. I want to take this number and I want to make this into a fraction. Well, there are a couple ways we can do that. First of all, say this number out loud, like you really should, like you have known you're supposed to do since 2nd grade. But if we read this number out, this is the 10th place, this is the 100th place. We would read this number as 33 hundredths. Ladies and gentlemen, guess what? 33 100ths is already a fraction. Now you can take that and put it in simpler form, but this is already a fraction. The other way we can think about doing this is, if you don't remember how to say the numbers correctly, to get this to be a 1, or 1s instead of a decimal, we would move the decimal point to the right 2 times. Well, remember, anything that you see is basically over 1. If I move my decimal point over 2 times, I'd move it 2 times after my 1 as well, and I would again get 33 over 100. So ladies and gents, there you have it. We can take a fraction or even a mixed number and we can make it in a simpler form. We can take that same fraction, we got rid of the whole number, but the whole number could just stand out front here. But our 1/3, we took that and we divided it and got a decimal. So from fraction to a decimal, remember it's just long division. Put your decimal point where it would go, mirror it on top of your line, and do the long division. The last thing to do, take that same decimal, rewrite it, and say it out loud. 33 hundredths, just write that as a decimal. If you need to go to the next spot, or if you can't remember what that would be, just take the decimal point, move it to make this a whole number. Remember, this is over 1, and you would move it the same number of spaces. Each time you go past nothing, you add a 0. So ladies and gents, that's all 3 things you will need to be able to do today. What I would like you to do now is to go on to the guided practice, which is right underneath here. Click on the 3 problems after you have tried all 3 on your own. So I want you to take what you've learned here. I'd like you to try all 3 of those problems first on a piece of paper, then watch the videos and watch me work them out with you one more time, and then you're gonna have some practice to do independently for me today and turn that in as a quiz. Good luck, and if you have questions, make sure you're contacting us during our open office hours so we can help you out. Good luck, and we'll see you soon.